Yep. Hi. Good evening or good afternoon, as it may be. Welcome to my backyard. My name is George. I live on Pequot Avenue in Mystic, and I'm actually a friend and neighbor of Peter and Terry Roper. And I'm a beekeeper. Peter and Terry asked me if I could do a show with them on beekeeping. And I certainly agreed to, because bees are in trouble. As you may have read in the newspaper, and need their help and awareness as we can get. So, who am I? I'm George. I've been resident of Mystic for about 30 years or so, and beekeeping for the last 4 to 5. I'm certainly not an expert in beekeeping. I'm still learning, but I've done some reading and have some experience. So, in my backyard here, I have 8 hives of various strengths and of health. When you're a beekeeper, you're always kind of solving problems because of the health and the stature of the bees. So with that, we're going to take a look at a couple of the hives. We're going to take one hive body, at least the top end of it, apart to show you the frame structure and what bees are doing right now in southeastern Connecticut in late October. And essentially what they're doing is they're getting ready for winter. And winter's coming, as you know, winter's coming pretty soon, and so the bees will start preparing for that. They don't go dormant, they don't go to sleep per se, but they sort of settle down and cluster real tight to conserve heat. And the queen will stop laying eggs. The babies won't be forthcoming because there's no need for new bees to come in. So with that, I propose we take a look at a couple hives. Okay. So we got here, it's late October, and it's about 66 degrees or so, and the bees are flying, which is a good sign, and they're coming in and out of the hives. They're all sort of clustering, trying to get in and out in a very small area, and I've closed up that area for various reasons. One of them is to reduce the cold air from coming into the hives. So they're coming back in with whatever pollen and nectar they're finding around. The wires you see coming out there is a little project experiment I'm going to try over the winter time. I'm going to try to heat the hives with some night lights to provide a little bit of warmth, extra warmth on those bitter cold winter days, or evenings. So that's the front of the hive. And when you normally work a hive, you work it from the back. So you're not impeding the bee's flight path and such. And that's what we'll do. But first, what we'll do is we'll light the smoker. And what the smoker does, it calms the bees, as you'll see, we'll puff a little bit of smoke in there, and two things occur. One is the bees think that there is fire coming, there's danger, and so they'll immediately start to feed in preparation to evacuate the hive. And the other thing the smoke does is to interfere with their communication by pheromone, by smell. So a tremendous amount of communication within the hive is done by pheromone communication. And so with some smoke thrown in there, it masks any pheromone communication that they have, as well as the perceived danger of a fire to the hive. So let's light the smoke. As you can see, it's got a bellows over here, and the bellows will pump air into the combustion chamber, which is here, which is this tube, and the smoke will then come out through this conical nozzle business here to put the smoke where you want it. This is just a guard to protect objects and such. The cylinder will get rather hot, and so you want a little guard around it. So the first thing you do is you open it, and you can see it opens on a hinge, and there's a firebox inside, kind of charred. So this is a well-used smoker. And then grab some newspaper as kindling. I find the New York Times serves as the best kindling, but of course you may decide elsewise. So some strips of newspaper get thrown in, and this is just to get the fire going. And the object is not to create a fire as much as smoke, but of course before you can have smoke, you got to have a little bit of fire. And so that's the kindling, and then my actual burning material here is in this bucket, and this is leaf debris, pine straw, old burlap or denim or anything like that will work fine. And again, the idea is to create a smoke. So using one of these barbecue lighters, you get a flame going, and you light the paper. And you may see, as I puff a little bit, some smoke is coming out. More fire, that's the actual fire, but of course you don't want that. But you want a little fire going. And with that, you take some kindling. Actually, you take some of your fuel, take just a little bit, you don't want to drown it, and you throw it in there. And keep puffing and puffing. And I'll tell you, if you got a young child, when you're 5 years old, nothing is cooler than being in charge of the smoker. So here we go, yep, huff and puff. And throw a bit more in there. You can see we're starting to get some flames a little bit. Let it die down, we get some smoke. And I'm just doing this in stages so I don't smother the flame. And actually this takes a little bit of practice. It's actually a little bit more, took me a while, and even I've been beekeeping for about 4 years, will smother the flame. So now what you want is, the details, you want a cool smoke, you don't want a hot smoke, and that's really whether you have the flames going or not. So what we'll do here is we'll just keep going. You can see we've got a nice chimney, put it back on, and now you can see the smoke is coming through the nozzle, the chimney nozzle. So with that, these bricks here I'll take off. This is to cover the hive. These bricks are put on here so that the hive top doesn't fly off in strong wind. Just put that to the side. Starter here, and what we do is we take our little smoker and we just put a little smoke in the entrance, and then I'll lift up this top. There are bees up here, and I'll smoke them just a little bit. In a couple of minutes, let the smoke permeate through the hive, and that will calm them down. Don't need a lot. Just enough to keep them to mine on the smoke. And so with that, I will suit up. I'm not in my bee jacket here because we're not going to do a full deep exploring of the hives, just take out a couple frames. So I got a veil, which is from my suit. Put that on so that bees don't come in your face. And of course protect your eyes, which is the most important part. So from bee stings. Now, as you may know, bees will only sting once, and then they leave their stinger in you, and they die, leaving their back gets ripped off, leaving their poison sac in the stinger. So I'm going to put on some gloves. Risk of getting stung on the fingers, but you don't need them. Many experienced beekeepers won't wear gloves. But I like gloves. And my little bag of tricks here. One is hive tool. And there's two different types of hive tool. Not to get detail, one's called the J hook. It looks like this. It's got a little J thing here that helps to lever up the frames. And it's got a little wedge action here to pry. And this one's essentially another type of tool. It's got two prying mechanisms. And everybody has their favorite, their beekeeper. I particularly like the J hook. So now I'm going to open up the hive. That's the top. This is what's called a telescoping top. It's flat at the top, made out of metal, wood around the circumference, and it fits over the whole hive. It doesn't crush the bees that are on the top, because there's a rim around the top cover, as this is called. Inner cover, excuse me, the inner cover. And it's telescoping because it fits over this like such. So it's called a telescoping cover. It's one of the parts of the hive, pieces of the hive. So with that, I take a corner and I take an edge and I lift. And what the bees tend to do is use a glue substance called propolis, which is kind of like, it is a glue of some sort. It's brown, resinous material that they get from pine trees. And they glue little nooks and crannies to protect them from winter and from the wind. So with that, taking off the top of the hive, you can see some bees crawling around here, and they got a little bit of comb or wax called burr wax. They're making a little piece of wax here. Set that aside. Get the smoker, and every now and then you got to give your smoker a little bellows action. Keep that smoke going. And all you do is you smoke them a little bit more, not much. And what we have here is, this is a standard Langstroth hive. This is a hive body, about 19 by 16 by about 9 inches in diameter. They're all standard. And inside it will hold anywhere between 8 to 10 frames of bees, and we're going to take a frame out in a second. And then in this case, there are times you have to feed the bees sugar syrup, and then I have a reservoir of sugar syrup here for them to feed. This being the late fall, the object is to provide them enough substance so that they make enough honey, which is their food reserves, to get them through the wintertime. The idea right now is not to take honey off for our consumption, but to give them enough food to supplement any nectar that's going around, and nectar flow is starting to stop. So they'll take the syrup and they'll convert that into honey for their use during the wintertime. So now I'm going to work the hive a little bit here. And this being relatively late in the season, we're not going to do a full inspection. We're just going to take out a frame or two to show the viewers what these honey frames look like. So the protocol is usually to really start at the edge, just in case the queen is around. And the queen really does not favor the edges of the hive body. She sort of stands in the middle. And so to minimize the risk of injuring the queen when you remove a frame, you start where it's minimum where she would be. And so with that, we'll start with a frame over here at the end. And the idea is just to get the frame out, and sometimes it's glued in place pretty good like now. And so you find a frame that's going to cooperate. And bear with me while I try this. I haven't worked this hive in a while, and so the frames are pretty glued in here with that propolis action. So, okay, whoops, I'm actually breaking this frame here. It's not good. Okay, so let's see if I'm breaking the hive. Okay, so now we got the frame starting to come up. Okay, this is good. Here. Now, this baby is now full of honey. This is what you want to see right about now. This is, you can see the bees on it. There's not a lot, believe it or not. There's not a lot of bees for a frame. All of this is honey that's capped here. You can see let me put this here. This is all honey, all capped honey ready for their use. And here I've sort of disturbed it as I lifted up the frame. You can see the honey spilling out. No worries, they'll take care of that. They'll do the housekeeping to fix all that business. Bees are just incredible. Here's the other side of the frame. More honey, which is good. I don't know if you can see some liquid in these cells. That you can clearly see it's a different appearance. And these are capped here, this sort of grayish material. Those are capped cells with honey in it. These here are uncapped, and the nectar, or the liquid, needs to be evaporated with some more water has to be removed by the bees. So they're not ready to cap this. This is honey in progress, as it were. This will weigh around 12 pounds, believe it or not. So this frame, it looks light, but it is not. It's about 12 to 13 pounds. So with that, I will set this aside, and I'll go through another series of frames, see what we can find here. This particular one is starting to, there's another frame. Again, some more bees, more honey, and you can see this business here. I'll explain that in another segment here. This is actually a foundation that the bees will start. You provide this foundation business here, and the bees will start creating the comb on top of that. And so we'll talk about that in another segment here. You can see here I've injured the frame here trying to get it out. Sometimes these frames are, got to do a lot of levering to get these frames out, and this one I've just pulled the pins out. So put this aside again. And let's just go down through some more. Sun is out, so we're not disturbing them too much. Another frame full of honey, much like the other ones you've seen here. So both sides, 12 pounds, deceptively heavy. Oh, I'm shaking here. Okay, so one more. And I'm looking for to see if there's any brood, any babies up here. I don't expect any, but because the queen has stopped laying, should have stopped laying. This is a beautiful frame of honey here, edge to edge, just filled. And here's another look at it on the other side. And as beekeeper in late autumn, late October, this is what I want to see. I want to see a lot of capped honey here for the bees to have access to in the dead of winter. They survive by clustering very tight and by twitching their flight muscles, and that generates heat. And that keeps them warm. So regardless of the ambient temperature, it could be 5 degrees, 0 degrees, they'll keep that queen, they'll all cluster around the queen, and maybe she's about an area about the size of a thimble. They'll keep her toasty, 93 degrees toasty, regardless as to the ambient temperature. To create that heat, you need fuel. They need substance. This is their fuel. This is their food. So, their winter fuel. And so, here's the next one. I think this is frame 5. Again, full frame to frame, both sides. And we got 2 more to go here, I think. We'll take a look at them. And I don't think we're going to find the brood. So here's another one here. This one's not fully capped. You may see the frame here. This is capped honey. You can see maybe the liquid in that cell. That's still honey to be capped. Still needs to be evaporated. Some water needs to be evaporated from that. And then here you can see the yellow. Here, that's the foundation. So they have not built comb on this yet. They're in the process of doing that. The other side is kind of the same. Honey, foundation. You can see quite clearly here, foundation here. Now these horizontal things here, that's wire that I've placed. And here many beekeepers will wire their frame. And what that does, it provides a little more strength and body to the whole frame, rigidity to the thing, so that you won't experience what we did on frame number 1 there, where I lifted up an edge. So what beekeepers do is they strengthen their frames before they insert them with by putting another piece, some wire, string with some wire. And now the last frame I'm going to pull is adjacent to the feeder, and this one is okay. This one needs a little persuasion here, and with that, okay, again. Nice full frame of honey. You can see I've disturbed it here. There's a big chunk down there that you can't see. It's actually on the side of the feeder over here. It's actually this piece here. And you can see how that honey is made and how that honey is stored. So here's that chunk we've opened up. You can actually see inside the cells, and that liquid, that honey, is just oozing out. Looks pretty good to taste, but this is their honey, so we're not going to enjoy their food. So with that, I will start returning frames in order. It's kind of good to keep the frames in order that you put them in. It's not kind of like rearranging the furniture in your living room. You know, you kind of get used to where your furniture parts are in your room, and you really don't want to move the sofa. You don't have to. So with that, the frames are kind of the same thing, but not mandatory. So with that, we'll here's this injured frame here. See if I can just do a little field operation here. Okay. Really stuck with the gloves. Okay. So bees don't like is vibration here. And I'm kind of, you may see, kind of may see them flying a little bit here because I'm kind of messing with them a little bit more than I want to. And the last remaining one, this is the one by the edge here. Now, you think I'm squishing bees, but I'm not really. There's some thing called bee space, which we'll get to in a second over here. So that's it. We just did a quick evaluation of the upper chamber of one of the hives here. 2, 4, 6, 7 frames you saw. There's what's called division board feeder here, and there's no brood here, and we didn't go looking for the queen. It's too not warm enough for us to really go down. She should be in this hive body here, and maybe some of her babies, but I doubt that if there'll be any broods. So to end our inspection, here's my cover. And what beekeepers do, they don't put it on like this because that's going to squish bees that are around the circumference of the hive. They kind of like slide in it, give bees a chance to get out of the way. And then here, the telescoping hive again. Don't have to slide it because of its nature of its being telescoping, and these edges are actually raised above, and so you can just replace that. And finally, the brick. And with that, I will remove the bee that has just come under my bonnet and it just stung me. So another part, we've gone to another part of my backyard. A couple more beehives here. You can see another set flying in and out. We've got one more hive here. We've got 2 other hives there. We've got 8 hives in total. And it's all part of the fun. What I got here is a piece of equipment. It looks like a hive body. This business here, like I showed you, this 9-inch high bit. But this one's a little shallower. It's called a medium super. Super is a term used for that part of a hive that's used to collect honey for human consumption. In this case here, this is about 6.5 inches, maybe 6 3/8 deep. And they actually make another one that's even shallower. It's about 5 inches. And these are done so that they're easier to, they're lighter and easier to lift, particularly for people that are getting on and that can't lift 100 pounds. This guy here, when full of honey, 10 frames at 12 pounds a frame is 120 pounds. So rather than trying to lift 120 pounds in an awkward position, many people go to this medium-sized super here, and this will run maybe 60 pounds. So a good hive in terms of honey production, target hive, expected honey production is about 60 pounds. So if this is full, this would be about 60 pounds per hive. Some hives create double that. Some hives create much less than that. Fortunately, I fit in that category where I'm creating much less than 60 pounds of a super. So with that, let me just show you this business here. You can see the frames are arranged all in a row. And this spacing is important here. You see this business here, these frames here. This is about 3/8 of an inch spacing. This is called the bee space. This is the Goldilocks spacing for bees. Neither too big nor too narrow. And it was actually discovered by a Yale minister, Lorenzo Langstroth, who more or less invented this hive business here, this removable frames, set the dimensions, and he was a minister at Yale in the 1840s, I believe. Eventually moved to Ohio. But he's the guy credited with this hive arrangement, as well as this bee spacing. And so the point is, you want the frames to be neither too wide or too narrow. In either case, bees will then fill it in with wax. So in the Goldilocks spacing of 3/8 of an inch, the bee space, you can consider it to be their corridor, as it were. And they won't infill it with wax that you may not necessarily want. That's called burr comb, that wax that you don't want. So with that, show you what this hive looks like, the frame looks like. Here's an empty one. It's got a foundation. So you may see the hexagonal nature on the foundation. This one is made out of wax. And so the hexagonals are there to kind of give the bees some guidance as to get things started, They'll know how to do that without this, without any suggestions, but most foundation has that hexagonal pattern there. You can see I've strung this wire business here I mentioned earlier on for strengthening the frame. when this goes into an extractor, when you're going to extract the honey for use, and these frames are ones that we would put in an extractor for human consumption. These frames go into an extractor like this, and they actually, in my case, they'll sit radial from a major axis, and it will spin around in a big cylinder tube, and the centrifugal force will spin the honey out. That will put some forces on the frame, and so this wiring business actually strengthens the frame for that, so you don't have the frame collapsing on you. And voila, here's the bees. Another hive. Maybe you got a little better shot here of bees that are what we call working the hive here. Here are those frames, that bee space that we talked about a little bit here, between here. And you can see they're doing their business here. Everybody's got every of the workers, and just about all of them are females. 99.9% of the hive are sterile females, one queen, bunches of male drones, but they're not around this time of year. And so here we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those frames. And I had talked about, this is the hive body, about 9 inches or so. So we got 7 deep frames, as we call. And then this box here, you can see here, it takes up a couple frame spaces and some holes in it. And that's call that the division board feeder. And that's where that syrup business, as I explained earlier on, gets put in here. So I have a watering can specifically for that syrup. I come in, and with no ceremony, I top this thing up. This holds about 1.5 gallons, maybe 2 gallons, depending on the size of it. So believe it or not, in high season, when they're hungry and that nectar's not flowing, 2 gallons of that heavy syrup will go in about a week, probably less than a week. That's how fast they'll consume that syrup, and how much they need those stores. They'll take that syrup and they'll convert that to honey for their stores. So my plan is not to remove this, disturb them. Try not to disturb these girls when you don't have to. We don't have to right now because kind of the weather. But if it was in high season, I normally would go through each of these frames, 7 here, 10 down here, and I would look at the health of the hive, and I would look to see if I can find the queen. Subtle variation of a normal bee. She's slightly longer, a little fatter in her back, and she's got usually a big black disc on her top of her head. Try to find the queen and try to see if she's laying eggs in signs of what we call larvae and capped pupa. And that's the next generation of bees. And we ascertain whether she's virile or not, doing her job. And her job during high season is to lay up to 2,000 eggs a day. So that's just another quick inspection of another hive body. So a question came up, what do you do in the wintertime? You talked about what you do in the spring, feeding them, and then the honey business, and collecting the honey for human consumption, and then medication, which you just touched on, we didn't get too deep into. And then, well, what do you do in the wintertime? Well, nothing, essentially nothing. You let bees be bees, as the saying goes, in the wintertime. And what you do is you work on your equipment in your basement or garage for the coming season.